Evening, everyone. My name is Leah Madry, and I am the executive director of the Dairy Barn Arts Center. The Dairy Barn was established in the late 70s. We are located in Athens, Ohio, with 8,000 square feet of gallery space, a full calendar of classes and workshops, and a variety of arts. And I am going to introduce your hostess this evening, Carrie Gunter Seymour, and Ohio poet laureate Carrie Gunter Seymour is the author of 3 collections of poetry and is the winner of the POTY Award, Story Trade Award, Legacy Award, and Best Book Award. She is a Pillars of Prosperity Fellow for the Foundation for Appalachian Ohio, the Executive Director of the Women of Appalachia Project, and is the editor of its anthology series, Women Speak. Her work has been featured in the American Book Review, World Literature Today, the New York Times, and Poem a Day. You can find her at www.carriegunterseymourpoet.com. Welcome, Carrie.
Hi, Leah. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here tonight for many reasons. I do want to remind everyone that tonight's event will be available for replay on the Dairy Barns YouTube page, and I will also post it on my Facebook and Twitter and Instagram pages as well. But I do want to thank all the fine folks at the Dairy Barn Arts Center for hosting us this season for Spoken and Heard, and to the Ohio Arts Council for being our sponsor, our financial sponsor. And we couldn't do these things without all this help, so I'm very grateful. Tonight, I'm featuring 2 extraordinary women, Kai Coggin and Kathy Fagan. And for those here with us tonight, we will take a few questions after the readings. So jot down your thoughts and be prepared to post them in the chat. So let's begin. Kai Coggin, she, her, is the inaugural Poet Laureate of the City of Hot Springs and author of 5 collections, most recently Mother of Other Kingdoms from Harbor Editions. She is a certified master naturalist, a K-12 teaching artist in poetry with the Arkansas Arts Council, a Catalyze Grant Fellow from the Mid-American Arts Alliance, and host of the longest running consecutive weekly open mic series in the country, Wednesday Night Poetry. Coggin was awarded the 2023 Don Monroe Leadership in the Arts Award for Visionary Service and the 2021 Governor's Arts Award for Arts Education. She was twice named Best Poet in Arkansas by the Arkansas Times and nominated for Arkansas State Poet Laureate and Hot Springs Woman of the Year. Her fierce and tender poetry has been awarded Best of the Net in 2022. 10 of Kai's poems are going to the moon with the Lunar Codex Project. And on Earth, they've appeared or are forthcoming in Poetry, Prairie Schooner, Cultural Weekly, Solstice, About Place Journal, Tupelo Press, and so many other places. She is editor-at-large at Swim, associate editor at the Rise Up Review, and serves on the board of directors of the Hot Springs Documentary Film Festival. She lives with her wife in a peaceful valley where they tend to wild ones and each other. So I first met Kai online during lockdown when we were all seeking solace, and her wonderful Wednesday night poetry was a haven during that time. She encouraged us to record ourselves reading our poems and send them to her, and she religiously uploaded them to social media so our voices could be heard. And I'll tell you, some weeks I swear she loaded 50 poets and their poems. It was just glorious. And even more importantly, she offered a safe space of inclusion and community. And that was so even more important during that time. I finally got the chance to meet Kai in person last October at the Dodge Poetry Festival, where I was serving as a festival poet, time of my life. Kai will be serving this year at the Dodge Poetry Festival. I can't wait to hear all the big fun that she has. But I can testify that she is every bit as dazzling in person as she is online, maybe more so. And I'm just so very excited to have her here. You can find Mother of Other Kingdoms on her website, kaikogan.com. And if you do the /bookstore, it'll take you right to all of her books. I'm just so pleased to welcome Kai Coggin to Spoken and Heard.
Okay, I think I'm on. Hello, thank you so much, Carrie, and thank you so much to the Dairy Barn Arts Center and to the Ohio Arts Council for all that you're doing to continue to have this beautiful series. It's an honor to be with you tonight and an honor to share space with Kathy Fagan, who you will be hearing from a little bit later. Thank you so much, Carrie, for all of your kind and sweet words and for everything you said about Wednesday night poetry. As she said, Wednesday Night Poetry is the longest running consecutive weekly open mic series in the entire country. We've never missed a single week since February 1st, 1989. This week we celebrated 1,859 weeks in a row. So it's a long-standing legacy. I've been the host since 2019 and through the pandemic and beyond. So I'm still the host. But I do want to share some poems from my new book. It came out on Earth Day. It's called Mother of Other Kingdoms. My wife painted the cover. My wife's name is Joanne. And I'm just going to get rolling. Petals. This morning I ache to touch you. Outside the wind is cold and rowdy, ripping spring buds off the trees with a degree of wildness that is reserved only for the natural. Between seasons, it is your name that holds me. The ground is littered with windswept petals, and all I hear is she loves me, she loves me, she loves me. Hungers. The mother doe and her fawn have been eating all of my flowers. I wake up to water a massacre of leaves, guillotined color, hoof prints left in moonlight. I imagine the vibrant pink roses and hibiscus crunching in their teeth, bursting bright hues, rich red dahlia petals lining their long, thick throats, the playful zinnias sliding through whatever curves deer intestines might wander like, and mammoth sunflower heads blooming 1,000 rising golden lights in the underbellies of this dear mother, her daughter, still spotted with newness. And I don't mind my flowers finding their masticating mouths, this wild decadence I planted from seed, making way to their hungers. Shoreless in Asia, after Ilya Kaminsky. I left a country I have since forgotten, and another country that never held me as its own child. Two countries like a forked tongue in a muted mouth, two shores that slip away at every step toward, sand unbecoming, an oceaning underfoot. Only two words of those distant lands hold my cheekbone to the ground to listen. They whisper in erasure, awash. Mida, Thai for father, birthplace language where you were once mine. American journalist in Thailand, CIA spy, man with two families, undercover, body double dad, and yet a solid tree whose thigh I clutched onto the moment before you left us in your America without you. A tall tree of leaving, my hands gripped to your pant leg in desperate remember, deciduous, falling away completely. Mida, Dad, you're 12 years dead now. I whisper your fleeting names into the wind to meet the scattered ashes of your many faces. I meet my own face there. I'm a writer now, Dad. Are you proud? Bahay, Tagalog for home. Another language. Caribou tracks in Kalibungan fields and fields of rice. Sakahan, meaning farm, the family farm. Sun on my uncle's dark faces, flip-flopped feet, the smell of wet grain, a pig roasting over fire, Dela Cruz surname, uncrossed, flies and laughing and heat, mother tongue, which I do not speak, my motherland, land of my mother. She calls me Anak, child, and I cry in another language. I taste home with an American mouth, traded Baha'i for assimilation. Nanay, mother, you gave up the Philippines for this American dream. We chased it, and we caught it in our teeth. We were lost children together, all of us. I am older now than you were then, and still I am many nights a child. You and your 2 daughters, 3 small foreigners in a land we never knew until we called it home, with everything lost, with everything yet to lose. Clutch, after Diane Seuss. I drive to a playground and just listen to them laugh. Watch as they spark conversations with each other, melt inside as imagination leads and questions are not far behind. They glow outside of me, and my womb is an empty field of bleeding hearts. If there is truly the taste of regret stirred into this poem, it is warm milk leaking from my full breast into nothing's mouth. It is my arms formed into cradle, rocking no one back and forth. My lips mouthing silent songs, lullabying goodbyes to who was never born into hello. I drive to a playground, walk toward the whimsy of their day, sit on a small rusted horse on a fat metal spring, and sway like a ghost. This is the lonely road of regret that leads to the grass underfoot of ache, the sigh of tomorrows empty of growing, the cycles of my uncreated children still sitting somewhere as stardust, hovering over me, waiting for the clutch of my hand to break through the sky. Thirst, for Colocasia esculenta. This morning's wonder is brought to you by the way an elephant ear can hold a drop of water, as if in a wide green cup held in its own sentience, how it sits on the leaf in a perfect globe, unflinching in its wholeness, a sphere of light catching an early slant of sun rising. The drop does not roll away, does not disappear into the chlorophyll of it all, just hold steady in the elephant's impermeable insistence. Who notices these moments but the poets? Who takes the time to write the lines of the way light shines through a single drop of water poised there on the morning leaf? Who sings the songs of these unheralded miracles but us minstrels, scribbling away in our quiet rooms, mumbling in our lonely corners where we pray in poems that these miracles never cease to find us, our eyes and hearts open, thirsty for a single drop. Rose-breasted, for Futicus Lodophiacianus. To be rose-breasted, as in the grosbeak that graced the feeder today on my lunch break. Me, in my teaching clothes, bright red beret, black shirt buttoned up to the neck, covered in roses, somehow a reflection before this auspicious landing. I sit on the bed with my shoes on because I have to leave again soon. My wife has been sneezing and coughing, so I brought her a pharmacy run of cough drops, allergy meds, Kleenex, and from bed, she's been watching the spring migration landing outside our bedroom window. I bring both our binoculars to bed, and for a moment, here we are, lunch break lovebirds peering close and hopeful. Then there, a sudden flash of black, white, and roses, he lands. A rare, vibrant specimen, gorgeous rose-breasted grosbeak, his feathers red like summer tomatoes, red like fire engine cry, a red blazing sunrise cutting through the sky. And I've been teaching simile and metaphor all morning to fourth graders at the school down the road. So all I see are figurative languages in the way he perches there. A rose blooming in mid-air, the roses on my shirt, the roses in my heart rising, rose-breasted chest bested only by this flying mirrored birdsong, quiet flutter, feeding on seeds during my lunch break, our binoculars both glinting in the noonday sun. This book leans pretty heavily on the natural world. A couple of years ago, I became a master naturalist. My wife's been one for 8 years, and I followed in her footsteps. And it really just gave me a whole new language as a poet. A tree was no longer a tree; it was a northern redbud. And so it just gave me a whole new vocabulary. And birds were no longer birds. A bird was a rose-breasted grosbeak or a tufted titmouse. And so, as a poet, that specificity really changed the way that I navigate the world and just the way that I write. Also, a lot of my poetry, my past 3 books, were heavily political and acts of survival and resistance. And I needed some healing. And so I turned to the natural world for those poems and those images and those feelings. And I realized by doing readings all over the country now that so many of us need a little bit of healing. Pipe organs inside a Japanese wind chime for Calabinium californicum. My God, it's so hot everywhere. 17 million gallons of sewage just spilled into the ocean over breakfast. Redwoods, matchstick, and mountains weep charred snow. Another 21 wild species become history. Oceans rise from ice caps melting and calving into the sea, all while we pretend we're surviving these intersecting calamities. And reader, I just want to go outside, turn off the world breaking and listen as a metallic blue mud dauber wasp vibrates a song no one has ever heard but me. I swear it. Tenor of hope here inside the bellowing giant barrels of a precision-tuned Japanese wind chimes my mom gave us as a wedding present last year. And now this maternally expecting, nesting, bright blue thing makes a tunnel of music inside a black metal pipe, singing a song of resilience in one of the higher chimes. If I had to guess it, in the key of G. Yes, here she is, blue blur building cradles of mud, creating a pipe organ inside her own church. This gorgeous buzzing and building, reverberating almost through the whole house if you listen close enough, powered in flight by the nectar of flowers. And don't you wish you could say the same thing of yourself? Honestly, I don't know where this poem is going, but today the heartbreaks and disasters, both global and deeply personal, are answered in this holy song, this tenor of building and buzzing, building and buzzing, building and buzzing, a mother's unseen labor, tuning fork of the universe, funneled down into mud making, a tunnel to some kind of good light, a nest for something to vibrate through, be it sorrow, be it prayer, be it love, be it hope of making it to the other side of all of this dark. Listen. I said, listen. Turn off the world breaking for a second and just listen. A mother is quietly building something out of nothing. The natural world still finds a way to sing. I miss seeing all the other little faces. I'm the only one here. I feel like I'm reading to myself, but I feel you all out there. This is called Intimacy. Late last night, I ran to you after writing. You were glistening and soapy in a bubble bath, and I read you my latest poem from the edge of the tub about how honeybees carry golden saddlebags of pollen on their hind legs, dipping face first into flowers, brushing off the dust of sex into these nectar-mixed purses heavy with hope. And you delighted in each tender line, splashing in the same wonder I had in writing the poem, your smile glinting and shining like a pearl underwater. And I've never made love like this. No choice. Since the Supreme Court land grabbed our bodies back to 1973, I've been searching for wombs inside other lives, asking if they know they have more freedoms than human bodies who can carry a child. I scream inside the deep wells of certain flowers, purple columbine, golden bells, red hibiscus, a floating white lotus, all with their impervious blooming, their wildness, their capability to wither at the whim of wind. I Google female sex organ of a flower and laugh at the irony of the word pistil, how a pistil in the flower kingdom carries an ovary and a stigma that has no shame. But in the human names, an ovary has the stigma of men's desires, and a pistil has less regulation than my womb. An AR-15 assault rifle in a classroom has more autonomy than the little girl it just blew bullets through. My heart keeps breaking at this country. I plead for light into the thousand faces of a mammoth sunflower, and they bow their pitying heads, set 1,000 suns. I sit on my deck among the mourning doves cooing in the pine, and I too mourn what I thought was mine. This body, this skin and cells, this flesh, this bone. I am beyond mothering. No, my body will never home or vessel a child, but this red state will bleed redder still with the trigger band signatures of these scheming leaders enforcing an unholy law that strips us all of our dignity and ability to do what is best for our own bodies. I scream into my valley and the mountains scream back. I clip my fingernails and these little crescent moons ask me about ownership. Which cells of mine have been sold to the highest bidders? Which organs no longer do my own bidding? In 2 weeks, I will become Auntie Kai to a little girl, a niece who I cannot wait to meet, a sweet life who I've already met in my dreams, a new baby girl born into a world where she has more protection in her mother's womb now than she will when she comes out. Little girl, what is this world we have shaped for you when you have no choice but to be born into it? I'm going to read one more poem to finish, but I just wanted to share that this Sunday I will be one of 50 poets that's reading for Poets for Harris. It's going to be an online event. There's already about 2,000 people registered to be in the crowd. I'm putting a link in the chat if you would like to register and RSVP, poetsforharris.com, and you can join this little movement, or big movement rather. And that's the poem I'm probably going to be reading. I haven't decided yet. I'm going to close with this poem. It's not that I can't have children. It's not that I can't have children, that my body is not a house. It's just that my life never had the chance to make room, did not open in a way to make itself a womb. The timing of years between my lover and mine, the age of different periods of mothering, inclining and declining at the same time. There just was never the solid enough ground of myself, or the chance even. A man was not in the cards, and I never even played from that deck, so it never really became a possibility. And I am almost at the apex of this want, this deep yearning to hold a child of my own flesh and bone, to make my body a home. But perhaps that proverbial ship has sailed, and the life that I have created is the life that I have, the life that I love. Perhaps my womb has turned outward somehow, and my heart is fertility itself. Perhaps I've always been a mother without a human child, searching for my children in the trees, in the understory of ancient forests, hidden under smooth stones, in warm, fur-covered bodies, in wing tuft and claw, in the exoskeletons of nymphs, phylums that lack a sort of mothering that I can give. So I tend to the wild ones. I mother other kingdoms, rock every other species to sleep, the green and howl and pulse and bloom. It's not that I can't have children, it's that I already do. Thank you so much, everyone.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Kai. Oh, there is so much music in your work. Listening to it and just hearing all the wonderful things that are happening that just take me right along, and it's music to me. So thank you so much for that. I love how your inner beauty shines as brightly as the outer beauty in everything that you do. So thank you so much for all your wonderful service to all of us. Don't forget Mother of Other Kingdoms on her website, kaikogen.com/bookstore to find her books. So you can have one in your hands in just a day or two if you order that right now. And so moving on, Kathy Fagan's 6th poetry collection is Bad Hobby from Milkweed Editions. It is the winner of the 2023 William Carlos Williams Award. That's just amazing. Her previous book, Sycamore, also from Milkweed, was a finalist for the 2018 Kingsley Tufts Award. A 2023 Guggenheim Fellow, she's been awarded a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship, an Ingram Merrill Fellowship, residencies at the Frost Place, Yaddo, and MacDowell, and was named Ohio Poet of the Year for 2017. Fagan's work has appeared in publications such as The Atlantic, the New York Times Sunday Magazine, Poetry, The Nation, The New Republic, Kenyon Review, the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, the Pushcart Prize Anthology, and Best American Poetry. She actually co-founded the MFA program at the Ohio State University, where she teaches poetry and co-edits the Wheeler Poetry Prize book series for the Journal at OSU Press. I first met Kathy in 2017 at an event at which she was receiving the Ohio Poet of the Year Award. And I was pretty much an unknown poet at that time. And I was just stunned by her genuineness and kindness to everyone who approached her at this event, including myself. So our paths have had the opportunity to cross a couple more times since then. And we've had some other exciting interactions, though, be it online. We were discussing that tonight. But the bottom line is Kathy is a rock star, not only here in Ohio, but nationally. And we're so very lucky to have her in Ohio and here with us tonight. And her latest books are Bad Hobby and Sycamore. And you can find those at milkweed.org/book. And you'll can find, do the search for Bad Hobby and for Sycamore. I am really just beyond thrilled to welcome Kathy Fagan.
Hello, everybody. It's been a minute since I've given a reading. Bad Hobby came out in 2022, and so it's been a while, and I confess, my heart's pounding a little bit. And also to follow Kai, who gave such a beautiful reading. Thank you so much, Kai, and thank you, Carrie, for inviting me and including me in this terrific series. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Dairy Barn. Thank you, OAC, for everything always. And I thank those of you who are here tonight. I'm going to read 9 poems from the 2 books that Carrie mentioned, Sycamore, 2 from Sycamore, a handful from Bad Hobby, and I finished a collection this year, which is what I was supposed to do with my year off, my one and only year off from teaching, and I'll read a couple poems from this new manuscript that I just submitted to Milkweed. First, I'll read 2 poems from Sycamore. This is called Perpendicular. It would have been a fine path for a lizard to cross, but I saw none. Brambles and sweetbriar grew on the town side, poppies and wild grasses on the river. Too hot for birds, the ducks were out, in water and mud, and frogs were out by the hundreds, it seemed, saying way, way in their deepest voices. It was beautiful there, but I'd seen beauty and its opposite so often that when warmth broke over my skin, I remembered winter, the way fresh grief undoes you the moment you're fully awake. I asked my young friend, when she turned 2, what she would serve at her birthday party, and she said, tofu and cupcakes. When she was 3, and I was very sad, she called and said, what are you doing? Picking flowers? She talked in poems like she was dreaming all the time, or very old, or Virginia Woolf. More often in the first world, one wakes from, not to, the nightmare. When I dreamed I lost my love, I willed myself awake because I would not survive the pain again, even dreaming. Which is responsible for that mercy, doctor, the conscious or the un? I want the poppies picked, and I want the poppies left where they grow, like looking through the window of a moving train at someone walking up a road lined with poplars, and being someone walking up a road lined with poplars, the train and the trees, a shower of petals and bees, sun on the glass, and the train perpendicular to the road. Things entirely themselves, arriving in the deep double shadows of the grass and passers-by. And this is Word Problem with Waves in Its Hair. There were 20 frittatas in that oven at any given time. They were little frittatas. There were starlings nesting in the wall beside the fridge. The knob on the oven looked like the combination lock to a safe. I desired to turn it in my hand like a curl in my mother's hair. She took me to the beach when she wanted waves in mine. She wanted to put somebody in it, she said. She already had my brother in her. He was a guppy in her belly then, and I her starfish, all replaceable appendage. Shells thrilled me, always filled with something, brains or flakes off the moon, and jellyfish like the inside of an elbow. My mother liked her beach stones wet and her sand dry, a flash mob of zha-zhas on the busy lip of every cresting wave, but nothing, not even the sun, could make me squint like the sharp tips of her glistening hair. The octopus has 8 arms, she said, 3 hearts. Octo 8, carry the 3, plus there are 2 sides to each horizon, as there are to every wall. There were never frittatas in that oven, but she may have mentioned them once, when long straw and short straw were the verticals we made, our different hair whipping greetings, though our backs were to them all. I've often found the seed of my next book in some poem of a book that I've just finished. And that was the seed for Bad Hobby, actually, in this book about this horrible breakup and the family of trees, the sycamore that I found to comfort me. There was this poem, this rogue poem about my mother. And I think you'll see how that connection gets made in these few poems that I'll read from the next book, Bad Hobby. This is dedicated. The way I remember it, I caught beauty like a flu via handshake or high five or a thank you for your service between the guys at the VA. The one who lurched toward me, touching me, saying, "You like poetry, more vision than question." The one who said, overhearing me correct my Korean conflict era dad, "Go easy, you won't have him long." Or the one who said, "You watch him like a hawk, just let him go." In the molecular biology lab, each tank full of impossibly small fish bears a sign that says, "You are responsible for your own deads." Plural, sure. The older I get, the more I am reminded of song dedications on the radio. I called Cousin Brucey to send out "I've Got You, Babe" to my parents on their wedding anniversary. When he played them Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves, Bob and Marianne were understandably confused, but appreciative nonetheless. I myself have had 3 partners in my lifetime, and what I still love best about 2 of them is how I never had to explain that joke. There was all that time listening to radio or TV. TV turned internet. I wish I could dedicate those spent hours now to my mom, so she could come back a while. She wouldn't have to know she was dead, like we didn't know then how much time was passing. I would play with her hair like I used to and tell her stories until she began to doze off like she used to, waking only to say, "I didn't ever know you loved me, Kath. You never wanted affection from us, Kath." Just like she used to. The wrong song, somehow the right song, playing on and on like a perfect virus. The Supreme Farewell of Handkerchiefs. My first time in the sky, I flew with my grandmother. She wore high heels. She'd come from the old country by boat, cleaned for a living, died before retiring from a factory job. The stewardess, also in heels, awarded me a set of metal wings, pin glued on the back. Some passengers received fresh decks of playing cards. It was just like the footage you see of flying in the 60s, except it was my real life. I wasn't scared, but held her hand anyway because I liked to, as we rolled, shuddered, and climbed, everyone and everything we loved below us. Goodbye, goodbye. At first, clouds parted like cream. Then bitch slapped our little plane good until we'd all had time to consider. Some asking why, I imagine. Some asking why not. How many times now has it happened? Holding hand after hand in the air, or pressing both my hands together thinking of theirs. That one's bones, this one's thumbs, another's tremor, their grace, skin, temperature, pressure. Why not here, in sky that stays sky, flying like the birds I cannot stop writing into poems, no matter how many people say, "Enough with the effing birds." Actually, only poets say that, and we're lying, because there's never enough for us. A juvenile sparrow hopped to our threshold, considered what it might find inside. "Don't worry, baby," I said. "We're okay." And with a sound like tiny cards being shuffled, it lifted its body back up to the sky. Just 2 more from this book. This is called School. How's everybody doing? I can't see anyone, but these days, just before dawn, I find myself asking Mom if I can stay home from school. I teach school now, and Mom is dead. But when I was a kid and said I didn't want to go, she wouldn't make me. She'd pass a cool palm over my forehead and get on with her day. Sometimes we'd nap together, but mostly she went to her job and I'd be alone all day. I don't remember what I did, and she never once asked me, never once asked why I wanted to stay home, and so I didn't ask myself. She must have trusted me, or not much cared, which may be trust's result. I stayed home because some days it felt perilous to be seen, and other days it felt perilous not to be. And these mornings it is so much both that I do not tell my students or family, because I think they must trust me, and because I think they don't much care whether I'm alone all day, with them or not. My mother. My mother is not a ghost. She doesn't visit or haunt me. I like to dream of her, but do not. Instead, she leaves me things, a string of green Mardi Gras beads in the parking lot, a gold-toned Misbah coin, a shiny mandala freed of its earring. Things a magpie might pick up, I pick up, knowing unquestionably they are gifts from her, the alchemy all mine, as if we were girls together at the mall, festooning ourselves in jewelry, the kind that's 2 for $5, saying, "That looks so good on you." Our faces in such bright agreement among the reflective metals. I can no longer tell which one of us is alive. And just 3 from the new manuscript. This one is called Disposition. Once there were coins for the eyes, a rag to tie the jaw shut. Now it's eye caps under the lids and mouths wired closed from the inside, and injectable, perhaps, to plump the lips out. The market swelled on reports of a wage freeze. Something was wrong with the world, with his mouth, with my good boots caked in mud. Taps, however, was better than ever. The walnut box, red-tipped golden roses. I'd signed a contract days before for what they call the disposition, referring both to one's essential spirit and what you pay to be done with the rest. And here now was Rain, leading the way for free. What I was looking for. What I was looking for were the unsent letters she left me years ago, in which I hadn't had the heart to read. I'd found everything else, or rather everything that could be found on paper, loose and bound, large, small, smaller still, the size of fortunes fluttering to the floor like moths, a message on each wing. So many poems, by me, but mostly others, some on slick paper I'd cut poorly from a page. My mother always said I was bad at scissors, and I've often accidentally cut myself, as if to prove her point. But now, both parents dead, it was time, I thought. I had the time and courage, I thought, and I found the letters. I was going to say, in the last place I looked, but of course, where else? And when I read them, they were a marital memoir full of disappointments, as familiar to me as my own skin, and the bitter recrimination she was desperate to impart so that I might avenge her, forgive her. I can't say for sure. All I know is I buried them both in separate graves. I held their bodies and most of their words and made my own from theirs. I lay them down on this white field, another, another, and another. If you look for us, look behind the letters, beneath the field, to the blood. And finally, a poem called The Dream Won't Come True. I think for some of us of a certain age, a lot of this will be familiar to you. This is the last poem, by the way. When we pull into the Sheet station on one of the first warm days of spring to gas up, the 80s earbug Sarah, loud over the speakers, makes us glad to be alive. We're ready to commit to a rewards card because gas is cheap, and the song reminds us of being young, which today means not yet orphans and still surprisable. Inside are hundreds of caffeinated drinks, both hot and cold, where fire and ice goes the starship song, like the Frost poem, Fire and Ice, and both are deadly serious in the same silly way. Rebecca De Mornay starred as Sarah in the YouTube video, and a woman appropriately less hot as the singer's mother, both lost to him despite the upbeat tempo. More pop than the Jefferson Airplane of the 70s, the pedigree's there, unlike Grace Slick's clothing that night at Gaelic Park when rain shorted the amps out and stripping seemed to soothe the crowd. It's no good to go back in time. My father-in-law, an old socialist, met his buddies for coffee at his local Sheetz, originally a small East Coast franchise. People talk of good or peaceful deaths as if they've seen one, but it's always looked like agony to me, despite the morphine. And knowing at the end of a hard life that shit gets even harder makes me long for oblivion. The storm in Sarah's ice blue eyes, Grace Slick's wet breasts, the candles on the evergreens in spring, so named for their brightness, their floating phosphorescent fires, are cold to the touch. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. No time is a good time for goodbyes. I'd once have asked of poem and song, where do we go when we say goodbye? Now, when we download the Sheetz app and the Shell logo appears on our phones, we feel the energy drain from our bodies. What will we ever know? We dream together below bright waves of distraction, like this poem, which I could end with frost or fire, song lyrics, dead dads, Sheetz or Shell. You choose. Does it matter how it ends if it can't end well? Thanks for your patience for listening.
Oh my goodness, Kathy, thank you. Oh, your voice. Your work is so visceral and visual, and my ear loves the tone of your voice. I could literally listen to you read all night long. So thank you so much for sharing. As a reminder, Bad Hobby and Sycamore are both available at milkweed.org. And Kathy has a personal website as well, so you can find her and find out more about her just using the Google button. Also, Mother of Other Kingdoms, Kai's book, latest book, is available on her website, kaicoggin.com, and the /bookstore to actually order the book. So I'm going to invite Kai and Kathy to turn on their video and their mics, and we're going to just have a little chat. We're just going to have a little chat tonight. And those of you here with us tonight in the audience, if you have a question you would like to ask of one of our poets, please feel free to put it in the chat. I'll try to be monitoring that. But I also have some questions, so I'll kind of start with my questions. And if you have something, feel free to put it there. We're just going to take a few more minutes here at the end to do this. I'm always fascinated to hear the answers to the questions. So I'm going to start with Kai because she was so modest tonight and she does so many amazing, amazing things. And I wanted you to talk to us about your trip to the Library of Congress.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So a couple weeks ago, I got back from Washington, D.C., where I was invited to go with the other 21 poets laureate who won the 2024 Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellowship. That's such a mouthful. And they invited us to Washington, D.C. to meet with the director of the National Endowment for the Arts and talk about our projects in this like United Nations style roundtable. And then we got to go to the Library of Congress and go into the stacks and go into Ada Limon's office there, the poetry consultant, you know, the Poet Laureate office. And it was amazing to be in that hallowed space. And then that night it was the National Book Festival. We were all invited to read at the National Book Festival. There was the opening ceremony of the National Book Festival, and they turned all the lights down in the Library of Congress and then projected these colored lights up onto onto the pillars and onto the ceiling, and it looked just completely otherworldly. And we got to have a party in there, and it was a very like VIP Library of Congress party. And it was incredible to be there with the other laureates, to hear about their projects. I'm really excited to get started on my project. My Poet Laureate project is called Sharing Tree Space, and I'm partnering with the National Park Service here because I live in Hot Springs, and we're actually the first federally protected reserve, even before the concept of national parks existed. And so I'm partnering with Hot Springs National Park rangers and interpreters and scientists and other master naturalists in my chapter, and taking high school kids, BIPOC and LGBTQ teenagers out on hikes in the national park. And it's called Sharing Tree Space. And it's just something that I didn't have access to as a kid. Growing up in Bangkok and Houston, the natural world was just not something that was open to me, I guess. And really seeing it as an adult, seeing the systemic things that are in place that sort of keep people of color out of the natural world. I just want to be somebody that opens it up to, marginalized teenagers so that they have the chance to experience the healing and transformative power of just being outside. It totally healed so many traumas and experiences within myself, that I just want to share that. So our first hike is coming up here in October, and I've already got a bunch of resources coming in from the Arkansas Game and Fish and Heritage Foundation, like wildflower books and all kinds of cool, fun stuff, bird books and snake books and things for the kids to have after the project is done. They're each getting a hiking bag that has binoculars and a magnifying glass and like all kinds of fun tools so that when it's finished, they will have, the resources to keep doing it for the rest of their lives, hopefully. And we'll be writing poems under trees in the national park. So, oh, I love that, Kathy. All the trees. How'd you do that? That was really cool.
It was
So yeah,
very,
that's what I'm really excited about. All my energy right now is just going toward that. And I'm really excited.
that's delightful. Oh, I'm so happy to hear all of that, Kai. Wonderful. Oh, um, well, I have one question for Kathy, and then there was a question for Kathy in the chat. So I'm going to, ask you very quickly. So I mentioned when I read your bio, Kathy, that one of your many, many roles at Ohio State University is co-editor of the journal's OSU Press Wheeler Poetry Prize series, which is a very prestigious series in the country. And I wondered, because people are always so interested in knowing if you're willing to kind of give us some insight into, I'm going to call them markers for lack of a better word, that you look for and your team and your jurors look for when selecting work, and maybe share a few of the more common mistakes you see people make, if you're comfortable with that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know why this sort of book competition phenomenon is shrouded in so much mystery. There's really no reason for that. We're as editors, as judges, as panel members, I mean, we're all aware of how our own biases sort of feed into these choices. And once a certain level of competence is reached, it's really like, if you have a dozen terrific manuscripts and you can only choose one, well, what is really the difference between one and the one that you choose and the other 11? Not a whole lot of difference. And I think that should we ever be in a position where we come that close to being a finalist, we should take some comfort in that and know that what that means is that someone thought very, very highly of that manuscript. I just want to say that to begin with. We typically get, Marcus Jackson and I have been we've been co-editing this series together for the Journal, which is our literary magazine at OSU, and OSU Press, who is the publisher of the Wheeler Poetry Prize series. It's a book prize that we run every year. It's for first books and subsequent books. We've published some really, really wonderful people, from Quentin Collins and Mag Gabbard to Corey Van Landingham and many, many others. It's a series that's very dear to my heart because when I was a young assistant professor at OSU, I participated in the screening process, and David Satino at the time was the judge. And I also edited the journal at that time myself. Now our MFA students do. We get anywhere from 500 to 1,200 manuscripts each season. We're reading right now, starting in September, the manuscripts are coming in. The way they're screened is via our MFA students. Our MFA students volunteer to read those manuscripts in one of our courses. We have a literary editing and publishing course. So at least they get credit, even though they don't get paid for doing this labor. And as all of us who've done editing know, it is labor. One of the things that we talk about in this literary editing and publishing course about reading through these manuscripts is, don't read when you're tired, don't read when you're hungry. Read when you feel like you can bring as much respect and empathy to the page as possible. And then make piles, the definite, this isn't quite up to publication standard. Gee, I don't know, I need another, set of eyes to look at this. And oh my gosh, I've just been blown away by this manuscript, making 3 piles, doing a kind of triage. What we're looking for primarily, and what I can't speak for the MFA students, but what we talk about a lot in that class and in our workshops is a certain quality of language. Number one, there are a lot of project books out there. I've written them myself. We're not necessarily looking for a project book. We're looking for someone who pays close attention and who has the ability to perhaps go beyond the self as a perceiver, and to think about issues, some of the issues that Kai was writing about, the natural world, other people, the children we haven't had, those kinds of larger concerns beyond self. And then just, language that is surprising, that is rich, that is suggestive, that might be formal, a manuscript that might be formally somewhat experimental, or for that matter, super traditional. I think, we're looking for something beyond competence, something unique beyond competence. And I'd be happy to, chat with anybody anytime via email about what other kinds of things might go into submitting manuscripts to prizes, not only our prize, because, it's an expensive proposition we're lucky enough to be able to offer, free submissions to people who can't afford the submission fee. And we sometimes run specials for people of color and women and that kind of thing. But it's, for most of us, it's $25, maybe $50 for some of these contests. And that's prohibitive for so many of us. So you want to, know your manuscript is going to get a fair shake, and you can never be absolutely certain of that. But we try our best at the journal to make sure that we're reading with respect and showing the manuscripts the attention that they deserve.
I love hearing that. That's wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that, Kathy.
Yeah.
So the question in the chat then was one that both of you actually, oh yeah, it says for both of you, excuse me. And this is often asked, I know, but people want to know. So poets that inspire you, traditional as well as contemporary. So we have very succinct question here. Kai, if you want to go first, since Kathy just talked, name a
Okay.
few maybe.
Kathy inspired me tonight. That was really beautiful to hear
Amen.
your work. I haven't really been exposed
Likewise.
to much of your work, and that was just beautiful, riveting. Let's see, in terms of traditional, maybe not so traditional, but I really got deep into Rumi when I was first starting to write. Rumi, Rabindranath Tagore, more contemporary, I would say Maya Angelou, Mary Oliver, Ada Limon, Joy Harjo, Naomi Shihab Nye. Let's see, Jane Hirschfield is like a bestie. I love Jane. And some of my friends that I just really love. I love reading like my friends, my peers. Joan Kwan Glass just came out with her new book, Daughter of Other King. No, that sounds like my book. Daughter of Three Gone Kingdoms. And I love Nicole Callahan's work. I love Diane Seuss's work. So many. I mean, it's so amazing and rich for us as poets to live in this community of poets, and to always be surrounded by poets. It's almost an embarrassment of riches. And so anyone can surprise me at any time. I also love just hearing from my local folks at Wednesday Night Poetry at the little coffee shop every week because it's so raw and new. And I remember those early days when I would just write something and want to share it that night at the open mic, and I kind of miss those days. And so I love that I'm able to facilitate that sort of space for people to just create such fresh and raw work. That's so beautiful. I mean, poetry is energy, and we're all creating toward the same sort of creative energy and beauty. And that's a beautiful thing. One of my favorite poems that I can think of, I love Gate A4 by Naomi Shihab Nye. I also love You Are Who I Love by Aracelis Girmay. Those are just a couple of things that come to my head.
I just taught that poem, that Gurmai poem, and had
Love
my
that
students
poem.
do,
I love
a
reading that
prompt.
poem out
Oh
loud.
my gosh, it's definitely a heartbreaker, that poem.
Yeah,
So tender and gorgeous in every way. My students absolutely adored it. And Naomi is a bud. She's just the best in the
yeah.
world. So definitely those two poets for me. I wasn't surrounded by literature as a young person. I'm first generation college, and we were a working class family, so there were books, but there wasn't a whole lot of poetry. My grandfather, who was from Ireland, had a strange sort of love for Edgar Allan Poe. So he would read me those amazing, the Tintinnabulation of the Bells and all of that. So, and I loved it. I mean, I just adored that stuff when I was young. And then, of course, when I was a teenager, I was reading Khalil Gibran and that kind of work, and then discovered Sylvia Plath, and then it was all over. I was done for. I love W.B. Yeats. I love Robert Hayden. I am really crazy about Brenda Hillman, who's a poet from Northern California, who I've been reading, it seems like forever. I've learned so much from so many of the poets that I grew up reading, that sort of half-step generation above me, people like Louise Glick and Drury Graham. Those folks instructed me a great deal. And now every day, not only am I reading my students' poems, but I'm getting, the poem a day poem in my mailbox. And there are often so many wonderful poems in that series. Poetry Magazine, Poem Each Day, Paris Review, archive poems, and you really can get just sort of filled up with poems every day, just on the internet. If you don't have a weekly reading series nearby, and I had the opportunity on my fellowship last year to be in Italy and to see a lot of this great Renaissance art. And one of the things that there are a lot of great stories that I could tell, but I'll limit it to this. One of the things that I learned about Michelangelo, whose work I was seeing, of course, everywhere in Florence, was that he lived longer than virtually anyone, in his time. He was almost 89 when he died, and that was unheard of during the Renaissance to live that long. And every day he would chip away a little bit at his piece of marble, not making much, right? But every day he'd do it. And legend has it that on his deathbed, he said in Italian, of course, not in English, "I'm still learning." And that feels just really, really important to me as a poet. I feel as if I'm even more eager to learn now than I was when I was in my 20s and 30s. And so that kind of thing, learning more poets, finding more poets, learning how to do different kinds of things with poetry has become really, really important to me.
I think that's a practice we all need to adhere to. You know, you're right. We have so many options to get poems sent right to our inboxes. You know, like you said, I mean, I think I get 8 poems every morning, you know, so I have enough poems for the day. I have to spread them out so that I can, you know, properly enjoy them and have the response that I want to have. But it's just such a blessing
It is.
to have that option.
It is.
Thank you, Kathy
Thank you.
and Kai. So I was going to share one little poem tonight before we say goodbye. This is from my latest collection, Dirt Songs. That's from Eastover Press. And this is a book that speaks a lot. Well, it has a section that includes my teen years. I grew up rural, and I grew up in a time when I'm not sure, Kai, you may not have even been alive. I'm not even sure, Kathy, you were alive either, but we'll see. Um, so here in Ohio, there is an amusement park called Kings Island, and it's quite a ways from the southern part of Ohio, and it took a bus ride to get there, and it was often what the seniors would do for their senior trip. And you have to understand that the band Bad Company was always playing on the loudspeakers when we would go. So now you know the time frame that I'm talking about. So this is a little naughty poem called Bad Company. Electric bass guitar riffs, magnified times 10. Subwoofers mounted to metal signposts. Paul Rogers' moany lyrics thrust every direction. His voice alone enough to slick the thighs of every female high schooler standing sweat-soaked in line. Senior trip, Kings Island, 1979. Hips banging, wanging side to side, arms thrown wide, waiting to ride the beast. Tallest, fastest, longest wood roller coaster in the world. The boys spurting predictable agonies and pheromones. Wasn't long before Emmy Bond and Jeff Bevins were all over each other, tongues tangling. I pretended not to see him slip a hand inside her shorts, ignored the way her head flew back. I won't say whether I let one of those rowdy boys do the 5-finger shopping cop underneath my tank top during the long bus ride home, but it was friggin' hot that day. I'll give you that. Oh, thanks so much, everybody.
Naughty,
Thanks so
naughty,
much.
naughty, naughty.
I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening and spending this evening with us. I want to thank the Dairy Barn. I want to thank the Ohio Arts Council. Please buy our guest books. It's so important to keep our small presses going. Remember, you can watch this again at a later date. We'll be putting that on social media. I am very excited to ask you to join me next month to hear the extraordinary voices of 2 Appalachian poets, Joy Priest and Mary Barbara Moore. And in November, Ellen Bass and Dustin Brookshire. So until then, be well, friends, and good night.